to the Greater Houston Partnership's 2021 annual meeting. Please welcome the President and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership, Bob Harvey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Greater Houston Partnership's 2021 annual meeting. Thank you all for tuning in. Well, who would have thought at our annual meeting last January in the Grand Ballroom at the Hilton Americas that we would be here today in these unique circumstances and unique times? No doubt the story to be written about 2020 will be dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic that has taken a tragic personal toll on so many Houstonians, as well as people all around the world. And while the year has been difficult, we should first pause to thank those heroes, the men and women on the front lines of this health battle at the Texas Medical Center, at our public health authorities, and all across our community. We also thank all of the researchers and experts who have successfully developed the vaccines being distributed today, along with the pioneering therapeutics to improve the recoveries of those already infected by the virus. I'm proud of the partnership's work alongside leaders at the Texas Medical Center, the City of Houston, and Harris County to ensure consistent and clear communications across our community, and particularly our work to ensure that business leaders and decision makers had the information necessary to make smart decisions to ensure the health and safety of their employees and the public. Alongside the health impacts of the pandemic, the economic impact of COVID-19 and the associated business disruptions, coupled with one of the worst energy downturns since the 80s, has taken a tremendous toll on Houston's economy. We know the road to a full economic recovery will be long. Our board chair, Amy Cronus, will talk more about how we can spark Houston's growth and recovery in her remarks later in the program. In May, we all witnessed the senseless murder of Houstonian George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. His death sparked an outcry from all corners of America that we must come together to not just address police brutality, but the larger issue of systemic racism in our society. I believe the business community can and must play a key role in this effort, not only as creators of economic opportunity, but also as influential catalysts for societal change. I look forward to discussing this topic later in today's event. And finally, we have all been shocked and dismayed by the events that have taken place in our nation's capital over the last few weeks. It is our hope that our country's most difficult days are behind us, and we can begin to bridge the divides that have separated us. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to take a moment to thank our executive partners, signature sponsors, and all those who made today's event possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for the Greater Houston Partnership's 2021 annual meeting. Each and every one of you play an essential role in our organization's mission of making Houston greater. We also appreciate the many individuals and businesses who make the important work of the partnership possible. Please join us in thanking today's event sponsors, our platinum level sponsors: Kinder Foundation, the Friedkin Group, at the Emerald level, Deloitte, HCA Houston Healthcare, Sempra Energy, Vincent and Elkins LLP. Today's gold level sponsors: Calpine Corporation, RSM US LLP, Westlake Chemical Corporation. Our silver level sponsors: AT&T, BBVA, Bracewell LLP, Citgo Petroleum Corporation, Comcast, Ernst & Young LLP, Haynes & Boone LLP, Heinz, HP Inc., Jacobs, Lone Star College, North Houston District, Prairie View A&M University, Silver Eagle Distributors Houston, LLC. Tudor Pickering Holt & Company. Thank you as well to the following companies for underwriting today's event. Social Media Underwriter. Sempra Energy. Event Program Underwriter. PNC Bank. The Greater Houston Partnership would also like to thank our executive partners who support the partnership and our community at the highest level of membership. BP America, Inc. Centerpoint Energy. Chevron. ExxonMobil Corporation. Insperity. JP Morgan Chase. Reliant, an NRG company. Shell Oil Company. And TC Energy. We would also like to thank the 2021 signature sponsors who provide generous annual support for our events, business resource groups, and meetups. A special thank you to the partnership's dedicated board members and 1,000 member companies for their investment in the partnership's mission. The Greater Houston Partnership would like to express our appreciation to the members of Houston's Consular Corps for their work to establish positive foreign relations between the Houston region and their respective countries. Their leadership is invaluable to building and maintaining the region's key international relationships. The Greater Houston Partnership would also like to acknowledge our elected officials, the men and women who represent Houston at the local, state, and federal level for their dedication and commitment to our region. Please join us in thanking our sponsors, members of the Consular Corps, and our elected officials. Together, we make Houston greater.
Thanks again for your support. And now I'd like to introduce and welcome the 2021 Chair of the Greater Houston Partnership, Amy Cronus. Amy, as many of you know, is the Managing Partner of Deloitte's Houston office and is a senior partner in the firm's energy, resources, and industrials practice. Amy started her career in Houston, but spent a number of years leading Deloitte's Central Texas office, overseeing extensive growth across the firm's footprint in Austin and San Antonio. She moved back to Houston in 2012 and was appointed local managing partner in 2018. Amy joined the partnership's board that same year and served as chair of our sustainability committee, where she led that group's efforts around building Houston as a smart city. Amy's a great Houstonian, and I look forward to her presentation today and the work she will lead over the coming year. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to everyone who's joining us today. As Bob mentioned, 2020 was a remarkable year. And while the headlines were dominated by news about the terrible toll of the pandemic, there were so many positive stories about Houston's resilience and even stories of great progress as we continued our work to advance Houston as a great global city. The partnership's work was led by our 2020 chair, Bobby Tudor. Bobby took the stage at last year's annual meeting and cast a bold challenge to position Houston as leaders of the global energy transition. Little did we know at the time how prophetic his words were as the global pandemic forever shifted the conversations about a lower carbon future and, according to most experts, accelerated that global energy transition. Fortunately, thanks to Bobby's leadership, work was already underway. Bobby has dedicated so much time out of his busy schedule and given it back to the partnership and to Houston. And this is especially appreciated given the year we had. In recognition of Bobby's dedication to the partnership, I am pleased to honor him with the Bob Onstead Leadership Award. Congratulations and thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Amy. It's been an honor to serve as the 2020 chair, and I'm proud and a bit relieved to pass the torch on to you. It was a heck of a year. This is not a brag, but I believe I might have had the most interesting partnership chair experience since we were founded back in 1840. Working to mitigate the combined impacts of the global pandemic, coupled with the most severe energy downturn any of us can remember, remains an ongoing challenge. But I was pleased that the partnership, including our members, board, and staff, were up to the challenge. The pandemic has certainly been tragic for many Houstonians, both from a health perspective and from the severe job impacts it brought with more than 350,000 Houstonians out of work at the pandemic's lowest point. I am proud of the partnership's work and our community's collective efforts to mitigate the long-term impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on Houston's economy. I must extend special thanks to the leadership of the Texas Medical Center and its member institutions who came together with the city and county to ensure a collaborative and efficient local response to the virus. These leaders and their institutions should be commended for their incredible efforts. Shifting to energy and the global energy transition that was the topic of my speech just 1 year ago, I'm afraid to transition to a lower carbon future. I am pleased that we've had fantastic support from the energy industry, who understand the issue better than anyone, and I believe we made great progress over the course of the year. We used the convening power of the partnership to pull energy leadership together to discuss Houston's path forward. This group agrees we must leverage Houston's unique knowledge base, talent, and infrastructure to lead the transition. No city can match Houston. We are actively developing an Energy 2.0 ecosystem focused on recruiting companies, startups, and incubators in energy tech, renewables, carbon capture, and the like. We had some tangible accomplishments this year in this respect, including the recruitment of Greentown Labs to Houston. This is the world's largest clean tech accelerator. It's headquartered in Boston, and they are opening their first satellite office right here in Houston in the Midtown Innovation District adjacent to the Ion. Certainly, we should mention Halliburton Labs, along with the incredible R&D work at the integrated oil companies, in particular, who are working to discover new carbon and non-carbon-based means of producing energy. And every Houston energy company that I know is working hard to lower their own carbon footprint. The momentum in Houston related to the transition is quite good, and it is essential that our companies continue to attract capital to attack this issue. So it's been a meaningful year of change for the industry, but this is a marathon and not a sprint. It will take the continued focus and attention from all of us in the business community to see to it that Houston goes through this energy transition period and comes out of it on the other end with the same sort of global leadership position and energy that we have today. I'm very confident that we will. Finally, amidst the turmoil of the last year, we were all confronted with the tragic murder of George Floyd, one of Houston's own, who became yet another victim of the systemic racism that has permeated our society. I believe the business community has an important role to play as our community pursues racial diversity, equity, and inclusion. While we have much work left to do, I am pleased with the efforts led by Dr. Ruth Simmons from Prairie View A&M and Gretchen Watkins from Shell Oil, who are co-chairing our Racial Equity Committee. We've established a set of guiding principles, not only for the partnership, but for all Houston companies to adopt as the business community helps advance Houston on this issue. I look forward to participating in this ongoing work. I want to offer a special thanks to Bob Harvey for his leadership through this difficult year and to the partnership staff for their incredible work. When you serve as partnership chair, you get a very clear view into how much work is going on, not just behind the scenes, sometimes in the scene. And you all do a terrific job, and this year was no exception, despite the difficult circumstances. I'm grateful to all the members of the Executive Committee and Board, along with our committee chairs for your leadership, and to all of the members who generously support the partnership with your time and talents, along with your financial investment. The next few years will be critical to Houston's long-term future, and I look forward to continuing to support the work of the partnership and know you will all do the same. Thank you very much.
And now I want to acknowledge and thank every member company who voted by proxy to confirm our 2021 slate of board nominees. We normally would hold this vote in person at the annual meeting, but of course had to shift to an electronic vote. The names of these new and returning board members are on the screen, with most set to serve a 3-year term. Nominees were solicited from the membership of the Greater Houston Partnership, and our nominating committee was then responsible for narrowing the list. The list was confirmed by electronic vote of the membership over the last few weeks. Congratulations to each of these board members, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead. In addition to these board members, I am pleased to announce our 2021 Vice Chair and Secretary. Per our bylaws, the Vice Chair will serve as Chair in 2022. I am grateful that Thad Hill, the President and CEO of Calpine, has agreed to serve in this role. He was also confirmed for this position via electronic vote of the members. Thad joined Calpine in 2008 and became CEO in 2014. Prior to Calpine, he served in leadership roles at NRG and Texas Genco. These two stints were preceded by his 10 years at BCG, where he led the firm's North American energy practice. Thad chairs the partnership's higher education efforts, including the newly formed Higher Education United with Business, or HUB initiative, to connect higher education leaders with leaders from the business community to build stronger connections and ultimately our region's talent pipeline. I am delighted Thad has agreed to serve, and I look forward to working with him this year and supporting him in his role as chair in 2022. Also today, we have the opportunity to honor two partnership board members with a special designation. Per our bylaws, the board of directors may appoint an individual to the position of director emeritus. This honor is bestowed on business leaders who have provided exceptional service to the organization. I am pleased to report that the nominating committee, executive committee, and board of directors have taken action to recommend that both Tony Chase and Charles Foster receive this special distinction. Tony Chase served as partnership board chair in 2012. His contributions to our organization span many issue areas, but most recently, he dedicated time to the Public Policy Steering Committee and the Municipal Finance Task Force. Tony is passionate about community engagement and chairs the City of Houston Harris County COVID-19 Relief Fund and co-chaired the City of Houston Harris County Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund. Tony has long been a supporter of the partnership in our work, and he is very deserving for the Director Emeritus title. Many of you also know Charles Foster, who is perhaps best known as a dedicated champion for immigration reform for decades. Charles has been an active member of the partnership's Immigration Reform Task Force and was chair from 2007 to 2014. He has contributed his time and expertise to the partnership's international investment and trade work over a span of 18 years and is quite engaged in several overseas economic development recruiting trips. Charles is active in the community and currently serves as the Honorary Consul General for the Kingdom of Thailand and as the Vice Dean of Houston's Consular Corps. I hope you will congratulate both Tony and Charles the next time you see them. Finally, we are pleased to present the 2021 Robert C. McNair Civic Leadership Award. The McNair Award is the most prestigious award bestowed by the partnership and honors a highly successful business leader who has also made outstanding civic and philanthropic contributions, advancing Houston as a leading global city with a great quality of life and opportunity for all. To announce the partnership's McNair Civic Leadership Award winner for 2021, I'd like to welcome Jamie Roots, president of the Houston Texans.
Thank you very much, Amy. And I am so pleased to be here today to present the McNair Leadership Award. Bob McNair was known throughout his life for his tenacious drive, generosity, and entrepreneurial spirit. He was an incredible businessman and philanthropist and an outstanding Houstonian. I'm pleased to announce that this year's winner is someone who has transformed the very nature of Houston through his many generous gifts and is rightfully deserving of the 2021 Robert C. McNair Civic Leadership Award. It's a great honor to announce this year's recipient is Rich Kinder. Perhaps no other individual in recent memory has transformed the face of Houston like Rich Kinder. Rich and his wife Nancy have invested in some of the most notable, game-changing projects that have improved the quality of life for all Houstonians, leaving an indelible mark for generations. A native of Missouri, but longtime Houston resident, Rich co-founded Kinder Morgan in 1997. The company, which Rich continues to serve as executive chairman, has grown into one of the largest energy infrastructure companies in the world. It is one of Fortune's most admired companies, and Rich is a past recipient of Morningstar's CEO of the Year award. Rich and Nancy formed the Kinder Foundation in 1997. The foundation has supported key programs in Houston, such as Discovery Green in downtown Houston and the renowned Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University. The Kinders also made a transformational gift in 2013 to support the Houston Parks Board Bayou Greenways 2020 project, which connected green spaces along Houston's bayous and created new parkland for all Houstonians to enjoy. In 2015, the foundation announced another major gift to the Museum of Fine Arts Houston to support the redevelopment of its 14-acre campus. The Nancy and Rich Kinder building opened this past fall to high acclaim and has already transformed the visual landscape of the museum district. In 2018, the Kinder Foundation made a grant of $70 million to the Memorial Park Conservancy to accelerate the implementation of the visionary Memorial Park Master Plan. The first stage of that work wrapped up last fall with the opening of the incredible Eastern Glades. Time and time again, Rich Kinder has been there to lead the way, charting a path that spurs others to join in the effort to build a better Houston. The Greater Houston Partnership is proud to present the 2021 Robert C. McNair Civic Leadership Award to a great visionary and a great Houstonian, Rich Kinder.
Thanks, Jamie, for your kind remarks. I'm not sure they're deserved, but they are much appreciated. When it comes to honoring me for our contributions to Houston, the lion's share of the credit should really go to my wife, Nancy, who's the CEO of our foundation and the real driver behind whatever success we've had. From the time we formed our foundation almost a quarter century ago now, we had some clear objectives. The first thing we decided was to concentrate our efforts on the Houston metropolitan area. Secondly, we decided we wanted to make it a rifle shot formation in the sense that we would make gifts of a transformational nature in the areas of urban green space, education, and quality of life. In doing that, we were trying to recognize and realize our objective of making Houston a better place for all of its citizens to work and live. Now, we couldn't have done this without a lot of partners. We've been fortunate enough to form partnerships with other foundations in Houston. We've worked with nonprofits who have implemented these transformational projects that we have begun. We've had a great relationship with local government entities, and we've of course benefited from cooperating with lots of other philanthropic citizens in Houston. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our small staff at the Kinder Foundation who have worked tirelessly over the years to advance these projects. So partnership is really a key word for us. As I look forward, I hope we can continue to do the same kind of effort that we've made and continue to have success in the future. So I thank you at the Greater Houston Partnership for honoring me, and I want to thank the Greater Houston Partnership for everything you do every day to make Houston a better city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Heartfelt thanks and congratulations, Rich. I am so pleased to be here with you today and to serve as the chair of the partnership. Houston is an amazing, vibrant place, and I believe it has the opportunity and the momentum to be one of the world's leading global cities over the next several decades. We have an incredible history of innovation. Changing the world is in our nature and our very DNA. After all, we are the city that put a man on the moon. We are the city that built an inland port 50 miles from the coast that now moves more goods than any other port in the country. We are the place that is advancing cancer research. We are the global brain trust of the industry that powers the world. Put simply, we are the city that solves problems that matter. While Houston has progressed, the world around us has rapidly changed. Driven by the rise of digital tech, this pace of change has accelerated over the last 10 to 15 years. The digital transformation has come quickly, and the cities that have embraced it have enjoyed explosive growth. And while we know the world has changed around us, the COVID-19 pandemic is reshaping our world again. In fact, I believe the pecking order of global cities is being reestablished as we speak. Everything is up for grabs, and there will be metros that are winners and losers. The winners will be the ones that look at the old way of doing business before the pandemic and think strategically about where the world is headed as we emerge from this global crisis. Unfortunately, here in Houston, the combined economic impacts of the pandemic and the energy downturn have been especially pronounced. In the first 2 months of the pandemic, we lost 350,000 jobs. We've recouped about 200,000 of those, meaning about 150,000 Houstonians who had jobs this time last year are unemployed or left the region. While many major cities across the country experienced a similar impact, Houston's pandemic challenges have been worsened by weak oil and gas markets over the better part of the last 6 years. Over that time, we've lost more than 100,000 upstream energy jobs, and 500 exploration and oilfield service companies have filed for bankruptcy. These were the bedrock jobs of Houston's past success, and I don't believe we will be getting those back one for one. So to those of us at the partnership who think about Houston's growth, that's a fairly dire picture. But despite our challenges, I know Houston's best days are still ahead of us. That optimism likely came from my upbringing and my path to Houston. My husband and I are Midwest transplants who are proud to have chosen Houston for the start of our life journey together over 35 years ago. I was raised in a large family on a farm in Ohio. My husband, John, is a first-generation Greek immigrant. As we were graduating and exploring career opportunities, we decided Houston was the most exciting frontier available with the greatest opportunity. I knew very little about Texas other than images of tumbleweeds. I still clearly remember a recruiter answering my question, that Houston was a welcoming melting pot where anyone with drive and ambition could become successful, that it didn't matter where you went to school or whom you knew. We couldn't be more grateful that Texas, and Houston in particular, have been an amazing blessing for us and our family. We couldn't be prouder that our 3 grown children have chosen Texas for both their higher education and early career journeys. Houston remains a frontier filled with possibilities, welcoming people from all around the world. I don't know about you, but I have a competitive spirit and like winning. As a proud Houstonian, I want to ensure Houston wins, and I believe we are already on the right path. So which cities will be the winners of the post-pandemic realignment? I suggest it will be those metros whose businesses are focused on developing the technologies and driving innovations that change the world. It's not looking backwards, it's looking forward. That is what I want to speak to you about today. Here in Houston, we must be laser focused on building a strong, diverse 21st century economy. Since I might have depressed some of you a few moments ago, let me tell you why I'm bullish on Houston. Over time, Houston has both diversified its economy and more recently has bolstered our innovation ecosystem. Over the past few years, entrepreneurs, investors, academic institutions, local government, and the corporate sector have come together to unite, grow, and promote Houston's startup ecosystem. The progress since 2016 is staggering. Houston has long lagged in venture capital funding, so we've made that a priority. Since 2016, VC investment in Houston has grown almost 250%, up to a record $715 million raised in 2020. Life sciences and healthcare became Houston's top-funded VC-funded industry, ahead of infotech and energy. We've also focused on building tech density. Houston is known for its sprawl, but we've capitalized on the hubs of density, energizing them with new collaborative workspaces, incubators, and accelerators. In fact, 30 new startup development organizations have sprung up all over the city since 2016. These programs help spur innovation by driving collaborations between founders, investors, academics, corporates, and other talent. One such project, the ION, which is the highly anticipated 288,000 square foot Midtown innovation space being developed by Rice, is set to open later this quarter. It will serve as an innovation hub centered between downtown Houston and the Texas Medical Center. I could name so many others: the Launchpad, the East End Makerspace, the Cannon. Each has its own character and focus, playing critical roles in accelerating the growth of our tech ecosystem. As we grow Houston's tech companies and attract organizations from the coasts, the strength of our academic institutions is also critical. I am pleased to report they are rising to the challenge. Just a few examples. The University of Houston has launched a data science institute powered by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, known as HPE, that is already changing the way companies harness and leverage data. U of H has also proposed a new carbon management center, which alongside the Carbon Hub at Rice University, is set to position Houston as the leader in carbon capture, use, and storage. Rice was the recent recipient of a $100 million gift from the Welch Foundation to launch the Welch Institute for Advanced Materials, instantly becoming the largest of its kind in North America. Rice and U of H are also home to the top entrepreneurship programs in the country. These schools top the list for preparing entrepreneurs for success among public and private universities. These are the types of visionary projects that move Houston forward. When we think about Houston's core industries, energy, life sciences, aerospace, along with manufacturing and global logistics, we have made transformative steps. We've got momentum, but we still need to double down with work to do. I'd like to focus today on 3 of those pillars of Houston's economy and how we drive success moving forward: energy, life sciences, and aerospace. On the first, energy. Bobby Tudor has spoken about this extensively. It is essential that we position Houston as leader of the global energy transition to a lower carbon world. Last summer, the partnership was proud to help recruit Greentown Labs to Houston. Greentown is Boston-based and is the world's largest clean tech startup accelerator. They're located right across the street from the ION in the Midtown Innovation District and will house 50 of the most exciting clean energy technology companies in the country. When selecting Houston as their first expansion outside of Boston, Greentown Labs affirmed our belief that no other city but the energy capital of the world is as well positioned to lead the transition. Earlier, I mentioned the work that Rice and U of H are doing to advance energy innovation. But of course, Houston's corporate community is also in the game. From the super majors to the service firms and the increasing presence of renewable companies, Houston is at the forefront of driving the Energy 2.0 sector. I agree with the folks at Greentown Labs. There is no city on earth that is better equipped with the talent, know-how, and can-do spirit to transform the way we power the world than Houston, Texas. Another industry sector that is driving change is life sciences and healthcare. Largely built around the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical city in the world, Houston has made tremendous strides to leverage its strengths as a clinical and research hub to drive commercial success. We've long talked about the Texas Medical Center as the largest, focusing on how many institutions we have and how many patient visits each year. And that is right and good. As this pandemic has shown, the incredible research and initiatives like the Human Genome Project at Baylor College of Medicine have changed the world. And were the foundation from which companies like Pfizer and Moderna built the COVID vaccines. All too often, however, the research born here in Houston is being commercialized on the coasts. We have to capture that back here. And the Texas Medical Center is positioning Houston for that work. The TMC Innovation Institute was founded 7 years ago, and since then has housed hundreds of life science companies focused on commercial success. As TMC's leader, Bill McKeon, shared last month at the State of the Texas Medical Center event, the next great step forward for Houston is the development of the 37-acre research commercialization campus called TMC3. TMC3 is the largest life sciences project in the world. The idea is to bring the academic research from MD Anderson, UT Health Science Center, and Texas A&M together alongside top life science companies to collaborate and drive commercial success. Success to the tune of a $5.4 billion anticipated economic impact per year, creating 26,000 new jobs. The first phase of TMC3 will break ground next month and come online in 2023. What's special about TMC3 is that we'll create collaboration and innovation at scale. It will be a catalyst that will advance Houston's position as the third coast for life sciences. And now shifting briefly to commercial aerospace. Houston has long been known as Space City, USA. As the home of human spaceflight, we put a human on the moon. And today we are home to mission control of the International Space Station. Houston is already home to a rich talent pool of nearly 23,000 aerospace manufacturing professionals and more than 500 aerospace and aviation companies and institutions. But the potential is so much greater. The space race is a commercially funded and operated industry, and it is critical that Houston maintains our leadership position. With the development of the Houston Spaceport at Ellington Airport and the vision of local leaders, the NASA Johnson Space Center, and private industry, we are using Houston's advantages to capture our piece of what is projected to be a $1 trillion industry. While the spaceport seemed like an ambitious dream just a couple of years ago, that ambition paid off when Axiom Space, a homegrown Houston company, recently announced it would build the world's first commercial space station at the Houston Spaceport. The company will create 1,000 new jobs to support the station's development and construction, along with private astronaut training. This is a game-changing project for Houston as we position our region as one of the country's leading tech hubs. It is the type of catalytic project that will drive meaningful growth of the commercial aerospace sector in Houston. So all of this is exciting work, and we have true momentum. But to build a strong, diverse 21st century economy, Houston must drive a technological renaissance. What does this really mean? I suggest we need to look at 4 areas. First, we must look inside ourselves at each of our companies. What value do we place on innovation? Are we committed to innovation, or are we simply trying to maintain what we have today? We must be committed to inspiring, cultivating, and rewarding technological innovation. How is your company partnering with startups, higher education institutions, and other stakeholders to drive innovation? Second, we must use Houston's global diversity as an innovation driver. We have something that most other cities in the world do not. We are one of the youngest, fastest growing, and most diverse populations anywhere. I'll spend a few moments here. When HPE announced last month that it was uprooting its global headquarters from the Bay Area and moving it to Houston, their CEO, Antonio Neri, said this: "Houston is an attractive market for us to recruit and retain talent, and a great place to do business. The most diverse city in America and the fourth largest, Houston provides the opportunity over time to draw more diverse talent into our ranks, a key priority for HPE as we work to be unconditionally inclusive." Wow, what a great endorsement for Houston. We know there are hundreds of tech companies in the Valley and up and down the West and East Coast that are striving to build global diversity within their companies. There's no better place than Houston to do this. Third, we need to think about how we are empowering the next generation of innovators and ensuring that all Houstonians have access to that possibility. How are we helping our local institutions of higher education to produce the talent needed to drive a technology renaissance? What role are our community colleges doing to prepare Houstonians for the high-paying, skilled careers of tomorrow? The Partnerships Hub Higher Education and Upskill Houston initiatives are two examples of how the partnership is working to facilitate the development of real talent pipelines at scale for Houston. I just told you about all of the amazing things that are happening here in Houston, and coupled with a high quality of life and a low cost of living, Houston has a lot going for it. But the partnership recently did some perception research about Houston, comparing it to other top metros. And it wouldn't surprise you that we land in the middle of the pack. Finally, we must tell Houston's story about our momentum and what an amazing place it is to live and work. Attracting the best and brightest companies and talent is key. Success will create more success. Those metros and companies that are seen as innovative will attract top talent and ultimately succeed. We are modern, sophisticated, and at our core, an incredibly global city. Global in a way that sets us apart from most U.S. metros. So as we embark on this work to drive Houston's technology renaissance, we must ensure perceptions of Houston are aligned with reality. Each of us engages with folks outside of Houston on a regular basis. They might be customers, vendors, or colleagues in other cities. We must each be committed to selling Houston. I think each of us has to own this. Houstonians oftentimes lead with an apology about the heat or the mosquitoes. That's not winning. All of us must broadcast Houston's current story. It's the story of a successful, vibrant, global metro.
Doers, game changers, problem solvers, risk takers, Houstonians. We hail from every part of the country and every corner of the world, creating a global diversity and way of life that is uniquely Houston and world-class. While our shared roots are proudly planted in Texas, Houston's reach and influence is truly global. We're a modern cosmopolitan city where all cultures and customs are invited to blossom and contribute. A city where diversity isn't a goal, it's a vital thread in the tapestry of our community. A city where dreamers become doers and ideas become innovations that truly change the world. In Houston, we don't just reach for the stars. We invent the technologies and build the tools that take us there. From pioneering medical breakthroughs to leading the transition to a more sustainable, lower carbon world, we solve the problems that matter most. Our business-friendly, pro-growth mindset supports both global corporations and disruptive startups alike. Houstonians enjoy the rich cultural amenities, unparalleled cuisine, and lush green spaces of a sophisticated global city, but at a cost of living well below the national average. Houston's exceptional quality of life, coupled with professional opportunity, attracts top-tier talent from around the world. And our strong educational systems, with nationally ranked universities, graduate schools, and community colleges, produce a workforce that is second to none. Our unique convergence of people, industries, and cultures are the key ingredients to our thriving economy and global competitiveness. In Houston, we do more than connect you to the world. We bring the world to you.
And that's how we talk about Houston. We have so much going for us. It's time to tell our story. So to conclude, we business leaders and concerned citizens are the potential catalyst for change in our community. Harriet Tubman once said, "Every great dream begins with a dreamer." Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Houston's brightest days are right in front of us. We are positioned to continue to be a great global city, to drive a technological renaissance. It starts with each of us through the work we do in our companies and the work we do here at the partnership to advance Houston as a great global city. We must be focused. We must be intentional. Houston is well positioned to lead. Together, we can make it happen. Thank you very much. Now I would like to welcome back President and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership, Bob Harvey.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you again for your willingness to serve as chair of the partnership this year. I'm really looking forward to working with you. Amy's remarks hit right at the core of our most pressing issue as we begin to look beyond the pandemic. For several years following the Great Recession, call it 2011, 12, 13, and much of 14, Houston was growing at an exceptional rate in terms of population, employment, and regional GDP. Driven by the shale revolution, which subsequently drove the petrochem construction boom, Houston was near the top of every top cities list. That began to change as oil prices fell in late 14, and we've been on an economic roller coaster ever since. To build sustained momentum in this new decade, we must focus, as Amy said, on positioning Houston as a technology and innovation hub. And I am so pleased with the progress we've made in this regard over the past several years. But we know we must continue to advance. The notion of building a strong, diverse, 21st century Houston economy isn't new. It's a key component of the Houston Next strategy we unveiled 2 years ago. We said we would focus on developing a more diverse economy, even as we advanced 2 other objectives: continuing to improve the quality of life in Houston and ensuring opportunity for all. Rest assured that we are putting a great focus on marketing Houston to prospects in our primary areas of focus, beginning with Energy 2.0, which is our term for both startups and established companies that are targeting new energy technologies and business models in a low-carbon world. Companies that help reduce emissions, contribute to sustainability, or simply enhance energy efficiency on a global scale. We're also pursuing companies in the life science, manufacturing and logistics, aerospace, and digital technology sectors, plus any company looking to move its headquarters to a more diverse, business-friendly, and globally minded city. We are working closely with our regional allies that extend from the city of Houston and the Texas Medical Center to the outlying cities and counties in the region. We're also working with the region's major real estate developers as they often hold the key to a successful recruitment. We've had some great wins of late, from United Imaging in the life science sector, to Axiom Space in the aerospace sector, to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Houston's newest Fortune 500 headquarters, which has helped validate Houston's position as a diverse, talent-rich, technology-oriented city. It takes wins at this scale to move the needle in a region the size of Houston, but it also takes the continued growth of the entrepreneurial and startup sectors to build a platform for innovation and future success. I'm thankful for our partners at Houston Exponential and the HX Venture Fund, who work in the startup space every day, and startup development organizations such as the Cannon, Plug and Play, and Mass Challenge, who are equipping startups with the tools and connections they need to grow. I'm very much looking forward to the opening of the ION, Greentown Labs, and TMC3 that Amy mentioned, all of which are located in the Innovation Corridor. But we have more to do in other areas. One of our most immediate challenges is reskilling and redeploying the 150,000 Houstonians who remain without jobs due to the pandemic. To support a strong economic recovery, it's essential that we focus on upskilling these displaced workers into new occupations that pay a good salary. Leveraging our Upskill Houston consortium of employers, educators, workforce, and social service agencies, we are launching a regional task force to develop a rapid action plan focused on this short-term upskilling and job placement need. In particular, we will be looking to the region's community colleges for support. With help from J.P. Morgan Chase, Upskill Houston is already focused on displaced oil and gas workers, preparing them for Energy 2.0 careers with companies such as Sonova, a homegrown solar company that has achieved a market cap of just under $5 billion since going public in 2019. Moving beyond economic development to the second area of focus, quality of life, we should celebrate the improvements we're making every day in our parks, bike trails, and cultural arts facilities. We are twice the city we were just a few years ago. But we must also keep working to ensure that major infrastructure for mobility and flood mitigation continues to move forward. Infrastructure always involves difficult trade-offs, and the responsible agencies have been seeking and incorporating input into how to make these programs more neighborhood-friendly. As one important example, I am hopeful that the North Houston Highway Improvement Project along I-45 can move forward with continued input from nearby residents so that we don't do anything to choke off downtown or to keep inner-city residents from accessing jobs in the suburbs. Please make no mistake, we need to continue to develop Houston's infrastructure if we hope to continue to grow. And growth creates opportunity, as we've seen in Houston for 185 years. On the third strategic priority, called Opportunity for All, we will continue to focus on improving education systems in the region. Pre-K through 12 has seen a significant setback with the pandemic. Too many of our kids are not keeping up in this largely virtual environment, and many have dropped out completely. We will have a huge task this year bringing these kids back to proficiency. Fortunately, we have been building new systems and approaches under the leadership of Good Reason Houston, the nonprofit that the partnership, the Houston Endowment, and the Kinder Foundation helped launch a couple of years ago. Good Reason Houston has a model for improving the performance of urban public schools drawn from success elsewhere, and has begun to demonstrate success in several districts in the Houston area. And we also have the benefit of House Bill 3 from the last legislative session that steered public money into programs proven to benefit kids. Higher education also represents an opportunity in Houston. Put succinctly, how do we continue to develop the academic institutions within the region so we can offer quality and access to our diverse population and attract the best faculty and students from elsewhere? This is the focus of our Higher Education United with Business, or HUB, initiative. While I will continue to argue that our two best funded and highly ranked state systems, UT and A&M, should be invited to do more in the Houston area, we will be taking steps to advance our local institutions to see that they get the public support they and the citizens of Houston deserve. With all the progress the University of Houston has made these past 13 years under the leadership of Chancellor Renu Khator, we have an opportunity and an obligation to support UH's advancement to the next tier of public research universities. Now, this is not the time to go deep into our state legislative agenda for the session that kicked off a couple of weeks ago. But suffice it to say that we will be focused on two broad themes: energy and access. Given the state's fiscal situation, this will be a tough session. But we are intent on holding on to past gains such as House Bill 3 and advancing a limited number of new initiatives. So that's a quick overview of where we are relative to the Houston Next strategy we debuted back in 2019. While we developed Houston Next with three key principal components, as I mentioned earlier, we added racial equity in 2020 as a lens through which to view all of our activity, with some new initiatives focused specifically on racial and other existing initiatives that will be enhanced with an explicit equity component. Put succinctly, diversity, equity, and inclusion must permeate all of our work at the partnership. This past summer, we held listening sessions with local community leaders and underrepresented businessmen and women to learn more about areas of racial injustice and inequity that need to be addressed in Houston. In August, we announced One Houston Together, our commitment to leverage the power of the business community to address racial inequity in the region. And shortly thereafter, we formed a racial equity committee of our board to sit alongside our economic development and policy steering committees and drive our work. This committee is being led by co-chairs Dr. Ruth Simmons, president of Prairie View A&M University, and Gretchen Watkins, president of Shell Oil Company. The thinking of the partnership, and specifically this committee, is that while the issues of racial inequity and systemic racism are not unique to Houston, we have an opportunity as Houstonians to lead the way in reforming broken systems, offering support, and removing barriers. We often speak with pride of Houston being America's most diverse city. Now we must work to make Houston America's most equitable and inclusive city, a city that truly does offer opportunity for all. As work to rebuild the economy continues, there is a growing concern that the recovery will split along socioeconomic and racial lines, with minority communities suffering the brunt of the downturn and then seeing the least of the recovery. In Houston, real recovery must include all Houstonians. And I believe the partnership and the broader business community have a key role to play in addressing inequities and actively leading change in our city. We will have much more to say on this topic and new actions to propose over the coming weeks and months. So before we go, I should mention that I hope you will join us immediately following this broadcast for our live Q&A conversation with Amy Cronus. We will touch on her remarks today and will open the floor for questions, something we couldn't do at the Hilton. You can stay here on this screen for that conversation. But before we transition, I always try to end our annual meeting with a message to you as members and supporters of the partnership. First, let me say that we need to keep our eyes on the coronavirus. While the vaccines are now being rolled out, possibly a bit slower than we hoped, we never believed that the vaccines could affect transmission of the virus in a material way during the first several months of 2021. It simply takes time to vaccinate that many people. Every day, many Houstonians are still getting sick and requiring hospitalization. And unfortunately, many are dying. Our hospitals are filling up with COVID patients at an alarming rate. So please, as business leaders and influencers, let's not let up. Second, let's do what we can to help our fellow Houstonians get back to work. If you anticipate having jobs opening up in the second half of the year and into next year, let us know. Our community colleges and other training providers are equipped to provide rapid skills development and credentialing so people can get the skills needed to get back to work. And lastly, a reminder, we at the partnership can only do for Houston what you support us doing. Yes, that means maintaining your membership during these difficult times, but it also means taking the time to engage on at least one issue that you're passionate about. Our Partnership Week programming over the next few days will provide a forum on the topics and issues we're working on, with experts from our board and staff to help you find that perfect place to engage. I hope you'll take advantage of it. Sign up today if you haven't already. More details about Partnership Week are on the screen, or you can find them at houston.org in the events section. The strength of the partnership has always been in its membership, and I look forward to working with each of you this year. Thank you very much for supporting the partnership throughout 2020 and for joining us today. Be sure to stay tuned for our special Q&A session with Amy Cronus, broadcasting right here in just a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Katie Pryor, Chief Development Officer and Senior Vice President of Member Engagement for the Greater Houston Partnership. Thank you for joining us for today's annual meeting and for staying tuned for our live fireside chat with Amy Cronus and Bob Harvey. We had around 2,000 people tune in for the main event, and we know many of you have stuck around. In this afternoon's live discussion, Amy and Bob will dive deeper into the partnership's strategic initiatives for 2021 and Houston's unique opportunities to further its position as a great global city. On behalf of the partnership's staff, board of directors, and 1,000 member companies, we are honored to have each of you as a part of the virtual discussion that you'll participate in today. The partnership's impact is possible because of you, our member companies, and we thank you for your investments and your engagement in our work. If you're not a member and joining us for the first time, we welcome you to the conversation and can't wait to get you involved. Later in today's discussion, Amy and Bob will take live questions from our virtual audience. If you have questions about anything you heard at annual meeting or the topics they discussed throughout the fireside chat, We encourage you to participate in today's chat by submitting your questions via text using the information on the screen. Now, let's continue the conversation by welcoming back President and CEO of the partnership, Bob Harvey, and 2021 Partnership Chair and Deloitte Houston Managing Partner, Amy Cronus.
Well, thank you, Katie. And Amy, thank you for being here today and for serving as chair in the upcoming year. I'm really looking forward to our discussion and working together. Before we get started, I should note we are observing COVID-19 safety protocols to produce this live event. We are appropriately distanced, and Amy and I have a plexiglass divider between us. You know, at our traditional annual meeting, we come together in a large ballroom. We give our speeches, and then the event's over. This virtual setting gives us a great opportunity for some follow-up discussion to unpack our key themes a bit more and to engage you, our members, in the conversation. So speaking of key themes, during our annual meeting, you heard details of our Houston Next strategic plan. While we paused our Houston Next capital campaign during the first several months of the pandemic, the implementation of the capital plan never stopped. I'm pleased to share we have restarted our fundraising efforts, and we've had 3 new investors in the start of this new year. So we're currently at $27.4 million against our goal of $50 million over 7 years. So thank you to all of our Houston Next investors, current and future, for investing with the partnership. Now, as Katie mentioned at the beginning, we do encourage all of our viewers to send in your questions around the issues outlined during the annual meeting. So please text your questions to the numbers on your screen. So with that, let's get started. Now, Amy, you know, in your speech today, you called out Houston's opportunity to embrace what I believe you called the innovation transformation that is driving the reordering of the world's global economies. Tell us why you focused on digital transformation as your key priority as chair of the partnership.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. You know, as I outlined in my speech, Houston-based organizations have made significant investments over the last 10 to 15 years to become digitally mature. But I know we can do so much more, and it's important that we do so. In this next phase of digital transformation, much of this work will be focused on innovation in B2B companies, so which has traditionally been an area of strength for Houston, and I believe gives us an opportunity to lead. Our Deloitte research has found that digitally mature companies enjoy benefits that include, but also go well beyond the bottom line. The benefits include reduced environmental impact and increased workforce diversity, which are increasingly seen as just bottom line companies' basic broader social responsibility. So we have a unique opportunity to work together as a community to ensure Houston reaches this next level of digital transformation.
Well, Amy, in your speech, you also noted the great wins that Houston has had over the last several years, and you suggested that businesses and citizens need to act as catalysts and champions, I believe were your words, for change in the greater Houston community. So could you describe for our viewers, how can Houstonians help spread the word about all that Houston has going for it, and how can they engage in not only the partnership's work, but the activities around the community as a whole?
Absolutely. You can tell this is a favorite topic of mine. Let me begin by reiterating that Houston's a great global city. We're incredibly fortunate to live in such a diverse, vibrant city with a strong economy, and we just keep getting better. I truly think we have a quality of life here that is not as well known as it should be, but it's really truly transformed over the last decade. The arts, the culinary scene, our parks and green spaces, lots of sporting activities. We have so much right at our fingertips, and we enjoy all of it at a much lower cost than other major cities. So again, as I said in my speech, when you have the opportunity, we have to spread this message. Repetition matters, and you can be part of this. I want to encourage everyone to be an advocate, an ambassador. So when you're talking to your friends and family in other places, when you're collaborating with colleagues and associates elsewhere around the world, please use these opportunities to discuss what makes Houston special. You know, I'm one of the biggest advocates for telling the Houston story. So as a key part of the story, Bob, we want to share Houston's incredible diversity. We often speak with pride of Houston being America's most diverse city. You and I both mentioned it in our speeches today. But this summer, Houston and the entire country were confronted with the murder of George Floyd and experienced the ensuing national reckoning with racial injustice. And this reckoning was new for some, but for many, it was a reality all too familiar. Can you talk about the partnership's response to the events of the summer and our approach to addressing these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, you know, George Floyd's death was such a such a tragedy, such a shock. We knew we needed to act, but we were encouraged first, before acting, to listen. And as you recall, Amy, we spent a lot of time over the summer meeting with members of the community from a diverse cross-section of groups, from community activists and community groups to entrepreneurs from the minority community, and talked about the challenges they face. We talked to our own staff, probably something we should have done before, but we heard a lot from our staff. And you'll recall, we spent the June and August board meetings largely focused on this subject. We then formed the Racial Equity Committee of our board, chaired by Dr. Ruth Simmons, a president of Prairie View A&M University, and Gretchen Watkins, the president of Shell Oil. This is a board-level committee. We only have 2 other committees that operate this way, simply made up of board members. We then retained someone we had never had before, a head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the partnership. We hired LaTanya Flicks, and she's going to lead our efforts both within the partnership, but also our programmatic efforts out in the community. The Racial Equity Committee set out to develop a set of principles, we call them our racial equity principles, that would really be the framework for the Houston business community to describe its commitment. You know, we use a phrase, I used it in my speech, reforming systems of bias, strengthening underserved communities, advocating inclusion, removing barriers to achievement. Well, we've developed a set of principles now that speak to how we're going to do that. And we've had over almost 100 of our board member companies that have signed on to those principles, and we'll be soon to be asking other companies in Houston to sign on. We have a long way to go. We're just really moving into the programmatic phase, but I'm very pleased, frankly, with the commitment that the partnership has shown and the progress we've already made. You know, Amy, to continue on this topic, I'd like to hear your perspective, frankly, about this phrase. Again, I think you used it in your remarks, Houston's opportunity to become America's most inclusive and open city, and one that offers opportunity for all. What does that statement mean to you?
Right. Well, it was true for me 35 years ago, and it's still true today. DE&I is absolutely important in innovation and digital tech, strengthening the economy. We hear from companies that are looking at Houston to relocate or expand their operations, and their leaders want to know how we are creating real opportunity for people. It's not enough for them to hear that Houston's a diverse place. They rightly want to know how inclusive it is. And as a business community, we're working to ensure that everyone feels that they can belong and succeed here. And so I'll mention our several goals around that. We're reforming systems of bias, we're strengthening underserved communities, we're advocating inclusion, and we're removing barriers to achievement. Together, we have to continue to work to advance racial equity within our organizations and communities.
So Amy, I'd like to now shift to a completely different topic, and that was one, again, we talked about a bit on the event a few minutes ago. That's the global energy transition. As we know, Bobby Tudor really led the partnership in this direction, beginning with his annual meeting speech a year ago. He's continued to lead the effort. We refer to it as, how do we help create a more efficient and sustainable low-carbon future while accommodating global demand growth. We call that the dual challenge, you'll recall. And that dual challenge still exists, by the way. And I'm really pleased that Bobby has agreed to continue to chair our energy transition effort. But with your background as, with Deloitte's Energy Resources and Industrials practice, and your work with the Sustainability Committee in the prior couple of years, could you tell us about your outlook on the global energy transition and our unique opportunity to continue to position Houston as a leader in this space?
Sure. Another favorite topic for me. So to set the context, energy transition is about the transition from hydrocarbon dependence across the economy toward greater reliance on cleaner energy sources. And it's only going to accelerate. As many are already aware, the Biden administration is elevating a lower carbon future agenda through policy changes and large-scale investments, including, I'll mention some, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, investing $2 trillion over 4 years in infrastructure clean energy, achieving economy-wide net zero emissions by 2050, and a carbon-free power sector by 2035. They've announced intention to incorporate climate considerations throughout policymaking in the executive branch. They're requiring disclosure of climate risks in financial statements of public companies, and pursuing environmental justice by enhancing investments and creating jobs in marginalized communities. So as we all know, Houston's a market that has thrived on being leaders in the exploration and processing of hydrocarbon. Yet we're also very much a city of intellectual and research horsepower in the energy industry. So we have the opportunity in Houston to move along the energy transition path by 6 channels that I'll quickly mention. One, contributing to the knowledge to create new technologies and advancements in renewables and carbon capture. Secondly, mapping out the pathway to decarbonization and how Houston can capitalize on our unique geographic position. Thirdly, paying close attention to the consumer wants and needs, as well as the stakeholder pool that will contribute to the energy transition acceleration. Fourth, keeping a close pulse on new policy that will drive change. Fifth, using energy efficiency as a driver for a lower carbon future. Lastly, supporting new investments in alternative fuels and renewables. In fact, Texas and Houston have already made some great progress with renewables. And Houston ranks #1, people don't realize this, in America in renewable energy use. So I thought I'd offer just a few other fun facts around that Texas is the U.S. state leader of wind energy, generating enough wind to power over 6 million homes. Texas is the 2nd state in the U.S. with the most solar capacity installed. The city of Houston sources 92% of its power from wind and solar energy. Our mayor has cited this often, and it just keeps getting better. And hydrogen production will require abundant, very cheap renewable energy sources. So, I think we're well poised here. Another interesting fact, Deloitte's done a lot of research around the impact of the energy transition with oil, gas, and chemical companies. And we're currently working on a very interesting project with the American Chemistry Council, a joint project focused on a pathway for a lower carbon future for the chemical industry. So with that, I just want to say there's so much going on that's exciting. And Bob, so I would want to turn it, Bob, to public policy around this. We know in addition to the partnership's economic and workforce development work, the organization also works in the public policy to advocate on all levels of government on issues that strengthen our business climate. So specifically on energy transition, it's been named a priority for the partnership, both in its federal and state legislative agendas this year. Could you comment on the public policy work at the local, state, and federal levels?
Yeah, I mentioned in my remarks that this legislative session, it'll be brief, it'll be difficult. The state is very fiscally constrained. I said our focus would be energy and access. And by access, I mean mainly education issues and digital access. But on the energy side, there's a whole host of issues that we need to be addressing. We think about legislation that impacts permitting of energy activities, regulation of energy activities, all the energy infrastructure, both, I would say, for traditional oil and gas, but all this renewable infrastructure that's going to take from power to others to advance. One specific opportunity you've heard a lot about is carbon capture, use, and storage, CCUS.
Yep.
We need legislation in Texas that really positions Texas as a leader in that respect. Houston needs it in particular because we have this opportunity to be the leader in CCUS, but the state has to do its part. There's a term called primacy. We need to have regulatory authority over a lot of this activity that otherwise would vest with our national government. You mentioned Mayor Turner and all that he's doing, the Climate Action Plan. We're going to continue to work with the city. That's been a great partner. And now we anticipate working with the Biden administration. The key there is to help the Biden administration come to that same conclusion that Greentown Labs came to, if you think about it, that really this issue cannot move forward without the support of Houston. We're in a great position, frankly, to do more in the way of climate change than just about anyone. So I'm optimistic at this point that we can make the case that with the Biden administration that there's a special role for Houston, and we want to play that role. So I think we need to shift, Amy, to the Q&A. So for the remainder of this afternoon's session, we'd like to answer questions submitted by our members who've joined us virtually. So please continue to submit your questions by texting the number on your screen. Now, to moderate our live Q&A, I want to turn it back over to Katie, who's fielding the questions coming in. So, Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Amy, for the great discussion. As Bob mentioned, we're going to keep the conversation going with questions that we've received from those of you watching. So thank you so much for sending them in. We will do our best to get to all of the questions we can, and anything we don't get to, we will follow up with you afterward. So, our first question, Bob, I'm going to pose this one to you. It is coming from John Sowers, SVP at Sempra LNG, and it's a question I'm sure many of our members have on their minds. How will the partnership continue to address issues around reopening and building back Houston's economy from the impacts of COVID-19?
Well, I'm glad that John's looking ahead, because that's a topic we want to talk about, we want to do a lot of things about. Well, first, we're helping with the vaccine administration. We're working with the medical center in the city and the county to see if we can move this vaccine administration as quickly as possible, and get it into the arms, as we say, of the folks who are at greatest risk. So I'm not, looking beyond that a bit. We've got to help people reskill and re-enter the workforce. 150,000 Houstonians do not have a job today that had a job back in February. And their old jobs may not be there, so we have to help them reskill and re-enter the workforce. So we're going to be working with community colleges, with employers who have jobs, with public schools, and with all of you in the community to help make that happen. But, Amy mentioned one other thing, which is this whole resorting of leadership around the world. We're doing a lot right now to position Houston as the city that someone should be looking at. If you're considering leaving the West Coast or the East Coast, well, consider Houston. If you have a company headquartered on the West Coast or the East Coast, think about whether you want to move that headquarters to Houston. That thought process has now entered the minds of so many executives, and we're doing our best to get the message to them that Houston is the place they should be.
Yep. I would just like to add around the opportunity to rebound a lot of the employees that were displaced and look at adjacent opportunities in adjacent industries. So for example, many of the skilled energy employees have STEM backgrounds in geology, engineering, and chemistry, and because of their deep roots in the sciences, they could provide real technical expertise for jobs needed in the aerospace and health and life sciences.
No, that's so right, Amy. Yeah. This idea of traditional oil and gas workers who've been displaced really ought to look at these clean energy jobs, climate tech jobs. They're growing very rapidly, and they can leverage many of the same skill sets.
Absolutely.
Well, Bob and Amy, why don't I take us to our next question? This one's coming from George Gonzalez, partner at Haynes & Boone. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into something that we've spent some time discussing. Amy, I'm going to toss this to you first. Amy, you've spent a great deal of time in Central Texas, specifically Austin. The market has experienced considerable growth in the tech sector in Austin and Central Texas. What lessons can Houston take from your Austin experience as we recruit tech companies and talent to Houston?
Sure. I think Austin benefits, many of us know this, they benefit from the growing, highly educated workforce and their reputation as an attractive livable city, and they have a longer foundation than we do of being a tech hub. And I think this further emphasizes our need for better PR, frankly, within both for ourselves and externally, to let people know how much we've really advanced in these areas. Our young people should be excited, really excited about the real opportunities here to both have fun and with lots of opportunities and fulfillment to really make an impact in the global world. As I said in my speech, what we're doing here around the opportunities for them to help energy in its next transformation, to advance cures for humanity in health and life sciences, and help progress the aerospace frontier, that's real impact. And our future of work studies show that's what our young generations really want to do. They want to have a purpose and make noble impact. And Houston, I think, we're well poised.
I think you're right, Amy. It's not hard for me to remember back when the motto in Austin was, keep Austin weird, which was almost a way of saying, don't come here. We like it the way it is. And Austin invested heavily in the semiconductor industry and kind of grabbed a particular niche and then took that niche and they've grown it into a strong digital tech foundation. Dallas went in the direction of financial services and they've been very successful there. We, frankly, focus largely on energy because that entire period were relatively good periods. When we asked the question you were asked just then, about Houston, just a few years ago, we assessed how Houston was viewed as a technology center. And frankly, it wasn't on the map.
Yeah,
and in fact, we were ranked like 33rd or something in the country of major metros when it came to digital tech. Now, what we discovered is we had a lot more capability than was being recognized because the digital tech strengths of Houston weren't in digital companies. You think of AWS or Google Cloud. They were in energy companies. And so we had to get the word out. We had a strong bench.
But that engineering heritage is so strong here.
That's right. It was kind of buried within the STEM workforce, right? We all talked STEM for so long. So we've done a lot in the last few years to make more visible what we had, but also attract AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, and others to really establish a visible presence here. You can't deny now that Houston's very much, in the forefront of digital technology.
Well, and on the rise with venture capital investment and all the tech hubs, it's exciting.
Okay, we're going to shift back to energy for just a minute. This next question comes from Stacy Keener at Western Governors University. Stacy is interested about hearing from Bob about energy companies and how they are working to reduce their carbon footprint.
Yeah, you know, Stacy, that's a great question because we normally put that issue first. That when we speak with energy companies, what we tell them is that the first thing they can do, unequivocally, is reduce their own carbon footprint. And that can come from just greater efficiency in their operations. With oil and gas companies, it's not letting that methane escape, which is highly dangerous to the atmosphere. It's reducing the flaring that's going on. Now, some of that flaring, one can argue, is needed, but much of it can be avoided with attention. So we're calling on the energy companies, even before they venture off into renewables and carbon capture and all these exciting new frontiers, to really first establish that foundation, which is doing everything they can to reduce their own carbon footprint. There's no pushback. They get it. In some respects, that's table stakes to even be part of the discussion today.
Okay, let's see what our next question here. Okay, we have one from Gloria Barrera at Veneer Construction Management, Inc. And Gloria is asking if the partnership has an initiative for innovation in construction.
That's a tough one. Interestingly, one of the companies that we've worked with to attract to Houston is Plug and Play, which is one of the leading West Coast, Silicon Valley innovation hubs. They're both a VC firm, they're an incubator, they're an accelerator. If you know much about technology innovation, you know about Plug and Play. So they identified construction, interestingly, as one of the areas they were focused on across their entire global footprint. And we helped connect them with the Houston construction industry. We have some of the greatest names in construction here in Houston, whether it's a developer like Hines or a constructor, I have to say like Harvey Builders, no relation to mine, I'm afraid. But we have just tremendous leadership in that respect. So it's one of the ways we could tell Plug and Play, come to Houston, we have great strength, you may not recognize it, let us help navigate through the Houston maze a bit. So there is opportunity there. That's a unique question. I don't hear that often, but it's a good niche opportunity for Houston.
Thank you, Bob. We have quite a few questions coming in. We're going to transition now to James Holmes. So James is the owner of PB and DJ Productions, LLC. James's question: what is the partnership doing to ensure Houston's workforce is prepared to meet the needs of changing industries and technologies? And how will we balance AI and maintaining jobs?
Well, let me come at it this way, and then we'll talk about the AI piece, which is an interesting twist on it. We've recognized the need to really enhance the Houston workforce for some time. Why are we so active in public schools? Partly is for the sake of the children and the families, partly because, frankly, as a community, we need a talent workforce, and we need that from our own public education system, not from elsewhere. But moving one step beyond that, we formed Upskill Houston now 6.5 years ago, targeted at the middle skill space, right? This very important segment of the Houston economy, about 40% of jobs that don't require a baccalaureate degree, but do require skills and training and credentials beyond high school. And we've worked across sectors with construction, petrochemicals, healthcare. We're now moving into transportation. So we're doing a lot to try to create pathways to these really highly promising middle skill careers. But then the other thing we've just turned to recently is HUB, and Amy, you mentioned that in your speech, and I mentioned it in mine, Higher Education United with Business, that's the acronym, because we've also recognized that, interestingly, Houston has not been a leader in higher ed. And that's a real deficiency today. People like to go to school and then go on into their careers in the cities where they grew up. That's, I'd say, different than 20 or 30 years ago. So we're doing a lot to try to advance Houston institutions. And frankly, Amy, I'll toss to you, that's where this digital issue has come up. We're spending a lot of time talking with local universities about how we can enhance our strengths in digital education, AI, et cetera.
Absolutely, and I think you're seeing a fast growth in the curriculum around data analytics and analytical thinking skills and critical problem solving. Those transcend across all of needs today in the job arena.
We mentioned the Welch Institute for Advanced Materials, that $100 million from the Wealth Foundation to Rice. People, when they hear advanced materials, they may not think digital, but actually new materials today are designed on a computer before they're ever built in the real world. It's really a digital tech application being applied towards advanced materials. So I think we're going to see this element really surfacing in a lot that's happening in Houston. I often say we have to be strong in digital tech in Houston. I mean, the future is digital. It's all about AI, machine learning, all those acronyms and things we talk about. Houston has to be a leader. Fortunately, our universities get it. And, you know, HPE making that tremendous contribution to UH.
And our community colleges are coming along.
Community colleges are very active in this space. So I think we get it, but, you know, are we leading? I don't think we're leading yet, but we're getting there.
Yes.
Well, thank you both. We're going to go to a couple of more questions. So this next question, this is for you, Amy. This comes from Paresh Patel, founder of E Squared Equitable Energy and inaugural member of Greentown Labs Houston. And Paresh is asking, given your leadership serving as the chair of the Sustainability Committee, how can the partnership rally the business community in driving the sustainability and resiliency goals? To this end, can the partnership join the city in leveraging the SDGs as a framework?
Well, the answer is yes, and absolutely. I think when we started on the kind of marrying our sustainability initiatives with Smart City initiatives several years ago, it was very much a team effort. I mean, we included not just the city, but county and county institutions, academics. We tried to be very inclusive. You know, Bob, I think you remember in some of the kind of the labs we did, trying to make sure we got all the constituents around the table. And there was no shortage of agreement that Houston needs to continue to make real advances. And so I think that the appetite's there. I think the city has done a lot with Jesse Bounds and Marissa and the other folks who have been really moving forward on data analytics, sensors, cameras, increasing our air quality monitoring. There's been a lot of advances that all move or are kind of under that smart city umbrella. There's still a lot to accomplish. I think, as always, funding is an issue. The city and the county, don't have infinite funds. So I think we need to continue, and I think the partnership is very committed to continuing to bring business leaders together to work with the county and city to make advances. Infrastructure, as Bob mentioned, is key and top of the list in terms of major improvements that we still need to make in our region.
You know, Amy, I think people were a little bit surprised when we supported the mayor's climate action plan. I think they were surprised not because they had read the plan and didn't like it, they just assumed we would be at odds with the mayor for some reason on that. Quite the opposite. We really worked closely with them in the development of the plan. We think it's a great plan. The mayor is one of the leaders around the U.S. They call it climate mayors. I think it's like 470 mayors around the country. And I'm pleased that he's in that leadership role because I think he brings really sound judgment and perspective into those discussions. And I think his plan for Houston, it's innovative, it's dramatic. I mean, as you said, Houston leads the way in terms of purchasing renewable power among major metros. Who would think that Houston would be the leading metro in that respect? So the city and the partnership, I think, are very much aligned on this topic.
But we welcome Greentown Labs helping us move forward.
That's right. We can still use help from them. Yeah. And I should say that if you listen carefully to that, you might say, well, you didn't say the county. The county is now developing their climate action plan. So I have the same optimism with the county. We're just at a different place.
I meant to say
with Harris County.
The county. Yeah.
Okay. So shifting gears just a little bit, our next question comes from Jack Belt, Executive Vice President at the Fort Bend Economic Development Council. And this question, we're going to start with you, Bob. Can you tell me what flood control improvements have been made, not planned or discussed, but completed and started since Hurricane Harvey?
Well, since Hurricane Harvey, Jack, that's a trick question. No, because it's hard to start and finish anything in that amount of time. But fortunately, Sims Bayou, which was well along then, that's really pre-Harvey, but it's the great example of what we're trying to do with these other watersheds. And so if you want to see a completed project, go look at Sims Bayou. Brays Bayou was that one, of course, that was so much in the center of the Harvey discussion. How can you not remember those images or forget those images? And now we've made great progress moving the Brays project along. We've also advanced some flood mitigation efforts that are around really just trapping the water, right? It's something you can do fairly efficiently, is to create impoundments for more water, so we see that occurring. But, you know, I'll kid Jack a little bit. It's a trick question because, frankly, this is a multi-year effort to do this kind of work. It takes a long time to design, permit, and construct. The $2.5 billion bond issue that the county did, you know, it's hugely significant. We can match that to federal dollars. But, you know, the partnership glibly suggests that we think flood mitigation is a $30 billion problem in Houston. So we're going to be at this for a long time. It's something we shouldn't lose sight of, so it's great that Jack continues to ask, and we'll continue to work it. But then there are other projects that are getting closer to the permitting and construction phase.
Well, I have to tell us that this is going to be our last question, and if we didn't get to you today, we will follow up with you because, no pun intended, we are being flooded with questions right now. So this final question, this is for you, Amy. At Deloitte, how are you seeing the future of work post-pandemic, and how will it impact remote work and how we set up offices?
Great question, and I don't think it was planned.
You have 30 minutes.
Yeah, I could talk about this for a while. Well, clearly we believe we're entering into a hybrid world, that the way we all go back to work after the pandemic won't be exactly the same, and that's good and different. I think it's still to be determined how each individual company will figure this out, but there's no doubt that the pandemic has led to the positive realization that we can all accomplish a lot remotely, that technology has enabled us to reach all over the world, frankly, and get a lot of great work done without the time invested in travel and planning, et cetera. So I think most organizations are looking at a hybrid answer to that.
I think you're right. You know, you mentioned, you used the phrase "to be determined." I mean, the shift, a few months into the pandemic, when people talked about going back to work, they were describing something that looked a lot like the old system with just a tweak or two at the margin. Now what I hear all the time is, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is going to be. We're having those conversations right now as to what that future is going to look like. I think it's going to be a more dramatic shift than we would have imagined 6 months ago. You know, the employers, I mean, the employees have discovered that they, in many cases, really like working from home.
Right.
And the employers have learned that it can work. It actually can work.
On the other hand, I think people have also concluded it's not an 100% answer, because the very real learning and development needs,
That's right.
the networking, the learning at people's elbows, so to speak, is a very real need. And the isolation does pose real wellness questions.
Yeah, that's what we just framed. That's the tension right now that you hear in conversation. How do we balance those competing?
So I think all large employers in particular have already really focused on the wellness issues that have arisen from this, and so you know, hopefully we'll move forward in a very positive way, getting the best of both worlds.
But answer honestly. I bet you've enjoyed not having to travel quite so much these last 10 months.
True. A true silver lining is more quality time with our families.
That's
There's
true.
no doubt about that. On the other hand, all those hours I thought I got back from traveling, I'm Zooming and teaming all day.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. We've all learned that too.
Yep.
Right?
Well, Bob and Amy, thank you for ending on such a thoughtful and positive note. And thank you for your time today and for giving our viewers an in-depth look at key priority areas for the organization and the region. I'm going to turn it back over to Bob for some closing remarks. Bob?
Well, you know, thanks, Katie, and thank you, Amy. Been a lot of fun. You know, as we've heard today, Houston does face many challenges, but you've also heard that we face far greater opportunities. And I want to thank Amy for taking on the role as the partnership chair this year, and her leadership in advancing our mission to make Houston one of the world's great cities to live, work, and build a business. Thanks also to all of our viewers who've joined us today virtually and have stayed with us. We appreciate you taking the time to learn even more about the partnership's work. Now, we hope you'll join us for our Partnership Week activities over the next few days, where we will highlight how our members can get involved in the issues discussed during today's event. For a full lineup of events and details on these activities, please visit houston.org/events. Thank all of you. Have a great afternoon. See you next year.